Good afternoon from the UK. It's the Southern Report. Thank you so much for joining me again for another amazing interview. It's our afternoon across the pond. It's your morning, wherever you are and what you're doing, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. There are those moments when you do this kind of thing that you have the opportunity to meet incredible people, and I'm going to bring on another amazing, incredible young lady who is a J6 prisoner, Felicia Konold. We're gonna talk about her story and go in maybe in a number of different directions to bring you up to speed with the reality as we are staring at tyranny that is coming down the line faster than people would like to admit. Felicia, thank you so much for joining me today. And it was fantastic and a real privilege to meet you on the Connecting the Dots show, which I had the privilege to host. And thank you for joining me for an hour yesterday. Felicia, we touched on your story then, and I would, for my hope little but growing audience, I would be delighted if you would explain your story. And I do know that you are about to be serving 45 days. If you could explain how that whole situation you have arrived at that point, etc. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I'll do a brief rundown and people are welcome to follow up on it. But I am a single mama of one at the time of January 6th, now currently two boys. In 2020s, where I'll start, I got in a severe motor vehicle accident that about cost me my life, but it did cost me all of my three jobs and my vehicle, my house. I then started traveling to do landscape photography, living out of a vehicle. I traveled all throughout the United States. My last state I visited was Washington, D.C. I was present on January 6th. I walked along friendly people, entered into the Capitol, created no acts of violence, left the Capitol when asked, returned home. For the last 3 to 6 years, I had been saving and planning to have my second child. I did artificial insemination with it due to not having a partner, and had that procedure done immediately prior to being rounded up at gunpoint by the FBI. Found out in prison. I was put in prison after they rounded me up on solitary confinement, and I was there for a few weeks. I then found out that I was indeed pregnant. Through battling, was approved to return home on home confinement, ankle monitor, GPS tracking. While at home, I live in a very rural trailer, not able to have anything delivered or not able to work. So I had a very, I'd say, unhealthy pregnancy due to stress and lack of nutrition and food for the entirety of the time I was confined to my house. I eventually, this whole thing has been an extensive battle where I independently have had to do excessive legal research and file so many motions and addendums and everything. So I was finally able to get the ankle monitor off briefly to give birth. I gave birth, returned home, was at home for a bit, and then was approved to be able to work some. I returned to work, working at multiple animal hospitals, where I eventually became a lead ICU technician at both of them. For the last year and a half, I've worked in a different city. So I would drive 2 hours and I'd work only overnight due to wanting to be with my children and due to homeschooling and having a little homestead at home and not being able to afford childcare. Made do with working overnights. So I would drive 2 hours to my hospital, work 13, 14, 15 hours overnight, drive 2 hours back home, come home, make breakfast, do chores, homeschool, and then return back to work. I did that excessively to survive and to try and stay afloat, along with opening up every type of credit card I was able to. I was sentenced. I pled guilty and then sentenced. I was sentenced probably 2 months ago now. Upon returning back from my sentencing, was immediately terminated from both of my long-term jobs, losing my income and insurance and everything due to now having a felony. I was facing up to 36 years in prison for being present there. I pled down from 5 charges, 2 felonies, 3 misdemeanors. I pled down just to 1 felony, which was due to being present. My presence there was obstructing law enforcement and aiding and abetting. So I now have a felony. I will be self-surrendering in just a few 3 weeks to prison for 45 days minimum, and then I'm ordered to return home and be on additional home confinement for about 3 months. My children, due to not having family, will be in 2 separate locations in 2 different states. I found a family that has also been prosecuted, but is very loving and aligns with my parenting styles, and has offered to take care of the 2-year-old now while I am away. But I do need to be able to figure out how I'm going to hopefully be able to stay in this house or this trailer that I'm in while I'm away, and to be able to support my children while I'm away, since the family is not financially able to care for them, but can physically care for them if I cover that part while I'm away. So that's kind of a quick, dirty rundown of.
No, thank you, Felicia. On the day you were touring America, and then you found yourself in Washington State. So you hadn't planned to be at Jan 6 itself. You just
Well, I
arrived.
did. So before
Right.
I left for my road trips, I would plan like, okay, these are the states I'm going to go to. These are the national parks I'll camp out at. So I had seen the president's message of wanting America to show up there on that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, I really want to go to Tennessee. That's my favorite spot. I'll go to Tennessee on this day. And then if I make it to DC, cool. If not, perfect. But I brought my med kit and everything in hopes to be able to make it. And I think I got there like the very late the night before, and I didn't think I was going to make it. Yeah.
So they arrested you. You talked about this. You actually you were saying that's where you met the Proud Boys. You were standing with the Proud Boys, and then you actually went into the building. You were fist bumping the police there, etc., etc. So
And fist bumping as in like a nice gesture, like with their fist, my fist, like, hey, what's up? Like a friendly, like,
right.
I don't
So
want that to be construed.
so what was the crime? What they charged you for obstructing, but you weren't obstructing anyone. You weren't obstructing.
They said my presence being there. So just by being there was not letting police do their job effectively.
Right. Even though the doors, as we know, the doors only open from the inside.
Yeah. Yeah. They were
Right.
100% open from the inside. And I walked in without any no vocalization to disperse or that we're not supposed to go in there. I walked straight past police officers, greeted them, asked them if I can help them, told them I love them. So, and then as soon as eventually after shots were fired, those shots are when Ashley Babbitt was murdered. After those shots were fired, then they said, okay, guys, we just got radio that shots are fired. We need you guys to head out. And we said, okay, no worries. Thank you guys. Turned around, walked out.
Yeah. So
and I was with the Proud Boys, walking with them. I had met them for the first time that morning. 2 or 3 of them, shook their hands. They were very nice gentlemen.
yeah.
Didn't know anybody or anything else there, so was offered to walk and hang out, and I was like, sure, cool. I don't have any plans. And they were inside picking up trash, also not doing anything violent or.
as you reminded me in another broadcast, and you've said this, that they've given Enrico Torrio 27 years, and he wasn't even there. I mean, this is another
Yep.
outrage story. They've given Joe Biggs 17 years. I mean, the big question is, of course, for what? So, could you describe? You were then arrested, Jan 6. You were then arrested on February the 10th, 2021. Could you describe that experience? What happened? Because I think this is profoundly important in regard to what we're seeing, which is total abuse by three-letter agencies. How
Yeah.
they actually came
So,
to your home and what transpired.
yeah. And as far as the abuse thing goes, I think people highly underestimate, or they have some false sense of security or privacy.
Right.
And that is what it is. It's false, because there's nothing that you do in your life that they cannot openly find out. Companies will have policies where, oh, you have to go through this first, or you have to prove this first before we'll give you their information. That's not true. They, with no restrictions, no laws, no guidelines, accessed anything and everything they wanted to, for not just me, for people I didn't even know that were they thought may be associated with me, that were not. They looked into all of their information too, which normal people say that's illegal. There's no way they could do that. They they did, and it's not up for debate. It's not my opinion. It is a proven fact of that has happened, not just to me, but to thousands, hundreds of people for this instance, and many more for other instances, that people are turning a blind eye to. So that morning, after they had done their surveillance and excessive investigation into me, whenever they decided to come to my house, they geared up on the corner of my small town, and then brought their undercover vehicles. There was many, I don't know, 15, 20 undercover vehicles. They blocked off the entirety of my road, ordered me out of the house. As I was walking through the house, I looked out of my side door and I could see all of their undercover vehicles in the road. And then all of the FBI agents surrounded my house with their ARs and shields. I walked to the front door. As soon as I opened the door, they're there with guns in my face and shields, ordering me out, like hands up. And I was still half asleep, and also kind of irritated because I'm a single mom that does homesteading. Like, I hatch chicken eggs and like bake bread. So to have all these grown men and some women at my face with their guns and shields screaming at me, I was kind of mad, to be honest. I thought it was a joke and I was really pissed. I was like, what the fuck are you, like, what is going on? And they again reiterate, like, put your hands up, walk slowly towards me. And I was wearing tight fitting pajamas, no shoes or anything. And I walk out and I says, does it look like I have a fucking gun on me? Like, I was like, what the fuck is going on? I just continue to nonchalantly walk towards them, grab my hands, handcuff me. They never showed me a warrant, never told me what was going on, what they were there for, why I was being arrested, never read me my rights, like nothing. They don't have any rules that they need to follow. They do as they please. And so then was placed in their vehicle while they cleared the house. They said they cleared the house. They didn't actually clear the house. They missed a few things. And I joked at them when they had all of my firearms on a table, and they said, is this, or they yelled clear, and I'm like laughing. And they questioned why I was laughing. I said, you guys get paid for this? Like, this is your job that you do professionally? And I said, you missed one. And they got all on edge, and I was like on my nightstand, and I yell out to the person going back in, like, careful, it's loaded. And I was like, this is like so ridiculous. Like, I was so upset. And then was like kind of joking with them, like, because I thought it was ridiculous, and I still do, to use that sense of force. They said they had to pull agents from surrounding counties and cities just to do this. whenever they could have like made a phone call and been like, hey, we need you to come down here. I'm like, all right, no worries. Like, see you in a half hour. So to use that extent of force um, is just bewildering to me. Um, and yeah, so then I was taken to their office, they attempted to question me. I declined to answer. Then they took me straight to prison where I sat.
So you've just gone through that appalling experience, which is you've got car after car, whatever, all these arms of the FBI coming to raid your property of this single mother with two young children,
And they
etc.
take whatever
Sorry,
they want as well.
yeah,
So whenever
um,
they went and turned the house upside down, they took itemized list pages of itemized objects from my house that are still never returned. Most that had nothing to do with January 6th. They just thought of any importance.
have, so when you say they've gone through itemized stuff, what have they taken? Things like phones, computers? What have they
Yeah,
taken?
all electronics. I had like I had a like the most ridiculous thing I think was like I had a Laura Croft Halloween costume. They took that. Like which was it's so dumb. They took all of my photography equipment. They took coins, like gold or silver coins.
Right.
So money they took, electronics they took, anything that was I don't want to say like tactical, but like the Halloween costume, like that's not functional for actual tactical things. Like it was a Halloween costume and they still took that, but they took like pants and shoes and like just so much random stuff. And then
And they have not returned any of that to you yet.
so what was one thing they take your ID and everything. So they returned my ID. Um, and these are things I had to like fight to get back. Oh, they
Right.
took all my diaries, books, those I haven't gotten back. Yeah.
When you say that you have had to fight to get them back, could you describe that process? Because, and I'm not going to say where you are, but the fact is that if you are having to drive from where you are to go to DC, like everyone, that is quite a journey,
Yeah.
which is the expense of that, which they don't pay for,
No.
etc., etc.
But it's
And
mandated. They don't pay for it, but it's mandated and you
right,
must go.
absolutely, and they expect you to be there. So could you describe the fight to get this stuff back? What's the process? What does this actually mean? Because
Yeah.
this
So you
takes a
have
load of
to
time.
have a description of the product. You have to go through your attorney. They have to write up a lengthy document. They have to submit it to the courts and to the prosecutor and to the legal team. You have to have valid reason for needing it back. Not like being your property or something you want is not a valid reason. So like my ID, I needed back for identification purposes and the inability to travel or drive to attorney meetings or doctor's appointments. So that was my reasoning for that. Um, Glasses, like if you need to see and
Right.
not being able to like, they usually tell you like get another pair. They don't care. But it has to be like that sort of thing.
So they arrested you. You're taken to the police building, the police station. How
The
long were
FBI
you?
headquarters.
Sorry.
It was only people that interacted with me were the FBI. So I was
Right.
taken to the FBI headquarters. No local police or sheriffs or anything were involved.
Right. Okay. Sorry. So you're taken there. How long were you incarcerated there for?
So I was just there for questioning. So I went from my house to the FBI headquarters, few hours, half a day for questioning, and then transported a couple cities away to a federal prison. And then I was in prison for a few weeks in solitary confinement
Right.
with excessive restrictions that no one talked to me, but eventually, after about a week and a half, a psychiatrist came to question me and found out I had not been taken out to shower, hadn't had any toilet paper replaced, haven't had access to a phone call. And when she was very upset by this, as was I. She found out like the restrictions that were handed down from the head of the prison were excessive, and none of the officers or corrections officers knew how to handle anything. So they just didn't talk to me, didn't engage me, didn't take me out for anything, just left me in solitary confinement.
So this was an edict, as you've just said, that actually came down from the person in charge of the actual prison.
Yeah.
The
And I
under
asked,
this,
I said, am I on suicide watch? Like, what is going on? And they laughed at me and they were like, no, like your restrictions trump any suicide watch I've ever seen.
so in one sense, they're like treating you like Jeffrey Dahmer or some other mass murderer.
Yeah,
And
I had to be moved. The US Marshals had to come if I needed to be moved. Multiple of them. Everyone else had to be secured away. I was not able to walk anywhere. I had my hands cuffed to a belt that was also a metal chain, and then my feet also chained, and then was like tethered to a chair that I was pushed in.
I mean, frankly, it beggars belief, to be quite honest. And I am deliberately asking you to explain all this, and it's for and it
I
is
think it
for
helps people understand because um,
precisely.
just like the book that we may be talking about, people may have vague ideas, but they don't have that firsthand experience that
No.
really paints a picture that people can comprehend unless they ask these questions. And it's been long enough after the fact, like it's still traumatic, but people need to know this.
I mean, because when you were released from there, you were then sent home, and you, as you've said, you had a tag put on your leg. You were then incarcerated in your own home
For no,
for
it didn't count towards anything. It was strictly because they thought I was a danger to society. I met no requirements for home confinement. It doesn't count afterwards for any time served. It was just a condition that they felt like putting on me that was also unheard of. Um, yeah.
so we end up concluding, and I'm sure if you think about your school days and also my own teaching experience, we come up with this whole thing, don't we? And also in history, where people want to make an example of others, example of an individual, so that others will then not respond, and they think we're going to scare people so that they will not respond. And of course, as the whole Jan 6 thing has then unfolded, we have then worked out the Fedsurrection, the lies. We have then seen the control within the media, etc., etc. Felicia, how and we're coming up to nearly ending the sort of first half an hour of the conversation, and then we're going another direction. But how are people treated you? What they made loads of assumptions? Have they actually fallen for the media lies?
Yes,
What are your thoughts? Right.
absolutely. Absolutely. I've had friends that I've known the entirety of my life that I have gone above and beyond and self sacrificed extensively for, who previously would say there's nothing that anybody can do or say that would alter our friendship or like anything. And those people turned their back and judged me. And it took close to recently until they kind of woke up and were like, hey, like, I know when you first came back and I called you a terrorist and didn't want to be your friend anymore and disowned you while you starved at your house. But I saw a bunch of stuff recently, and I think what you were telling me originally is true. And I can't be upset. Or I suppose I could, but I choose not to be upset, not to judge them. I just sit there silently in acceptance, like, well, I'm glad that you decided to trust me now. I was outcasted by all like like on the, like, I don't know what it's called, like systemically, I don't know if there's a tag on me, but I'm banned off of like all trading apps, all financial apps, all social media apps, housing apps, like everything, banned off of everything. So that, alongside with being exiled from people close and near, was excessive immediately. And then it has slightly, significantly dived down as people have learned more of the truth that I have tried to like tell them for a long time. I don't know how to articulate that.
I'm sure, I know that you'd be aware of the Canadian convoy that went all the way to Ottawa
Yeah.
to then to raise the fact that within Canada, the abuse of
Power.
power there,
And then had
is
an abuse of power to walk around arresting them.
absolutely
Their point immediately proven.
Right, and with what Trudeau, etc., did there, and of course the FBI had given advice to the Canadian government in that situation as well. That is out there publicly. I'm not making that up. That is actually out there, and as is illustrated there, that the control of people came by shutting people's bank accounts down. That's the concern in how they did that. So people not being able to then function.
Yeah, and it's very easy for them to do.
Yes. What kind of sort of disconnect comments have people made to you when they've gone? I suppose the hint is, well, this is America. This doesn't happen. What it does happen. What kind of comments have been made to you?
That's a good question. You mean like whenever people hear what has happened to me and they don't believe it? Those kind of comments?
Yeah.
Well, at first it was, if they're doing this, there must be a reason, a bigger reason, a more valid reason. Then there's you have constitutional rights that protect this, which is a joke, and we do not have anymore at all. None. Not a single one of them. And what else?
What did they do with your constitutional rights in regard to your court case?
Oh, they waived them.
Right.
Yeah, the right of the courts and the unforeseen precedents supersedes your constitutional rights, and they are all in void. And when you sign your plea deal, it says, I'll pull it up, not right now, but I'll send it to you. For all plea deals, you sign away your constitutional rights as well. So not only do they automatically take them, and the judge says that at every status hearing, he'll verbally say that to all the constituents, and then additionally, you sign them away at your plea deal.
So they've suspended your constitutional rights. Has that been something that still people can't believe? They cannot get their head.
I don't know who in the mighty sky they think bestows these rights upon them and protects them. But it's the people that do that. They bestow them on themselves and they protect them, and no one's doing that, and no one has done that. Everyone's gotten lazy and complacent and just assumes they're there. But they're not. The freedom to travel, freedom to speak, freedom to defense, freedom of a timely trial, all of them just gone with no debate. It's not something that you can argue or fight.
Well, you've said, as you so often do, a very profound thing there. The most important thing, without a debate, it's just being done.
Yeah, people think there's a chance. I think that's another one of the ignorant things that people will say is like, oh, well, if that happened to me, I would do this, or they would never do that to me.
Let's follow this thought through.
Yeah.
That's a very respectfully, that's a very stupid thing to actually say to you, instead of actually really putting themselves in your shoes. I mean, I'll just be very frank with that, because the way
That's
that you
one
were,
that I don't really have much of a comeback to, because I feel like the epitome of they wouldn't do that to me. A single mom sitting at home teaching her kids was rounded up by the FBI and sat in solitary confinement and imprisoned and tortured for 3 years and counting. So whenever people say, that would never happen, that can't happen here, that would never happen to me, it has happened to thousands of people, and it
uh,
will.
absolutely, and they want to round up more and more people.
And it's
Hence,
not because of what happened on January 6th that they're rounding these people up. And I don't think people quite understand that. Like, people walking into the Capitol is not why they're rounding everybody up.
go on. Why are they doing it?
Because people stood up for their inalienable rights, the rights that people assume are just automatically there. These 500,000 or more people showed up that day because we know those rights are not there. We know that we're being used and abused, and imprisoned systemically. And we stood up for that non-violently initially, and got gassed and beaten and explosives thrown at us. And that's when people went from a very peaceful, happy, singing assembly to address grievances to pushing back. The reason I think that they're rounding up these militia groups, which are constitutionally protected,
Yeah.
is because the greatest threat is a dominant male. So that is why they're in prison for 17, because they vocalized, this is our constitutional right, this is what we believe in, we're going to go stand up for it. And they're the ones that get the book thrown at them, because you can't have families, you can't have children, you can't have independent thinking people if you take away heads of household. Then you keep the kids in the system, you keep the moms away from their children and enslaved working where they work so much. I've been a single mom since I was 16. I've been working 2, 3, 4 jobs the entirety of my life. And if you think I have the energy to go protest at a Capitol or start a new amendment or voice my grievances whenever I'm doing that, you're wrong. Like, they make it physically impossible to be proactive for any of our freedoms, because we're so enslaved trying to feed ourselves and keep the lights on. And the only reason I had the opportunity to go and stand up was because I had been incapacitated. I degloved my face and broke my back and lost all of my jobs. That was the only reason I was able to show up that day.
So, what do people? I mean, sorry, I'll say something else. In regard to your experience, that your experience has meant that your education, e.g., you're going down the rabbit hole and looking at various subjects in regard to your constitution, the rights of being an American citizen.
Is it a
You were
rabbit
you
hole,
were
or is it education? Is it furthering my education, or is it going down a hole, right?
right. So, what is the answer? What is the answer here? How do we then wake people up? Do people want to be woken up, or do they not?
No.
Wow.
No, I think no. And you don't even know. It's a saying that I like to say is, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So if you don't know that the food you're eating is poisoning you and putting you in the medical system that was paid for by the people that create the poison and the solution, like, if you don't know that, you think you're doing good. You think you're doing the right thing. You don't know why you have cancer. You don't know why this is happening, why you have an autoimmune disease, because you do all the things, you do everything your doctor says, but that doctor's education was paid for by the people that make the disease. So if you don't know that, you don't know what you don't know. And it's a lot of work. It's stressful. I go to the grocery store and I wish at times I didn't know as much as I do, because so tiring. Like, I wish I was blissfully ignorant and I could pick a bag of Doritos up. But I look at it, I'm like, good God, I can't. Like, I can't do it. So why would you? Life's already hard enough. Why would you voluntarily make it harder?
Was this were you on this road of examining things and not accepting things in the way that you've been explained before January the 6th, or has this happened since January the
So
6th?
it was odd, but immediately after my accident, I had a complete, like, there was a lot of brain connections severed. Um, and it was an instantaneous change because I was fully mainstream, typical person prior, had my accident, and immediately upon discharging myself from the hospital, had that switch in mentality severely to where everyone noticed.
Right, right. Okay, we're going in a slightly
Also,
different
I think
direction.
being stuck at my home for a year
Yeah.
straight, I did a lot of research.
Okay, brilliant. I do. Sorry, absolutely. I mean, I find myself saying to a lot of people, I'm not asking you to agree with me. Please go away, do the research, and then come back, and then let's sit down and have an absolutely fantastic discussion.
Yes,
You
with
know,
facts, not opinions.
yeah, because it's really important.
Hmm.
Um, Felicia, you have a Jewish heritage, right? You explained that to me, which is fantastic. Could you talk about a human rights charity that you approached and why you approached that human rights charity?
Yes. So initially, when I first got out of prison, and a very few select people heard of, and I think this was my distant family, that reached out and was like, "Hey, I saw what happened on the news. You should reach out to this place. I forgot the name of it. I think you know the name. Um,
To Amnesty International.
yes,
Yeah.
reach out to them. These are basic human rights violations,
Mm.
despite the charges you're facing. Um, they will help you. This is what they do. Like, this is what they're here for. This is the definition of it." So I, hopefully, with high hopes, did reach out and I said, "This is my situation. This is what has happened. These are the specific basic human right violations that are occurring and continuing to occur." And was immediately dismissed. No additional resources given. Just completely turned away in a kind of aggressive manner, like in a disgust. And the
Have you got all
people,
the correspond? Did you email them? Did you phone them? Have you got all the correspondence of
I
that?
would have to look. So this is about 3 years ago, right? So I have to look. But I reported back to the people that referred me to that, and I said, "Hey, like, I did reach out. This was a response," and they were bewildered. Like, also could not believe it, and then had no additional help. They're like, "We don't know where to go. These are the people that are, like, there for these times, like the poster mark people that are supposed to help these kinds of people,
Yes.
and they pick and choose what they want to help with."
So do they, I'm assuming they have an office in America. So did you actually approach them in their offices in America, or was that outside America?
I don't know. So I wasn't able to go anywhere in person.
Right.
So wherever I contacted, I can find it. But as you can imagine, having to deal with the legal aspects of it, like, if someone says they can't help me, I'm not going
Mm,
to hunt them down and say, "Why can't you help me?" I'm on to the next thing. Like, I was consistently told I would be away from my children for 36 years. So
right.
taking care of them during the day, growing a
Yeah.
human, and fighting a legal battle took precedence over any extracurricular activities.
The reason why I'm bringing it up, I think, is profoundly important because Amnesty International is supposedly, defending human rights for people, but obviously
For people they want.
immediately it must have got the memo to back off this subject. But they
Yeah,
are
they wouldn't touch it, and a lot of people wouldn't touch January 6th. No one wanted their ink on their
yes,
hands.
yeah, yeah. Off camera, and also yesterday, for argument's sake, previously in an interview that I was privileged to do with you, you had mentioned Anne Frank's diary, and I just wondered if you could just quickly talk about that and say that when you'd actually come across the diary and just explain who Anne Frank was from your point of view.
Yeah. So I came across her diary when I was young, probably about her age.
Right.
I was in traditional school, and I don't even think they assigned it for me to read in school. I think I picked it up independently. Um, Having been Jewish and then seeing a diary written by a young Jewish girl, and myself having a traumatic childhood and upbringing, I often took to writing as well in a diary to sort my thoughts and deal with things, which was also very disheartening when all of them were seized by the FBI. Um, and she was a early teenager that lived during the Holocaust, that went into hiding, that was rounded up by the Nazis and eventually killed. Her story was unheard of until her father got word that she had been killed and someone had saved all of her letters and given it to him. He then edited them and published them. And that's when people got kind of a firsthand experience of what was going on, because they weren't too aware of it since then. And it's intriguing that people now, say this is not happening, but the similarities, this is not that long ago. It's like 100 years ago or something. It's not that long ago. So the similarities between the propaganda and reality, between being rounded up at gunpoint and rounded up at gunpoint, from being tortured and also tortured, like it's eerie. And I mentioned the one time that it correlated for me. I hadn't thought about it at all until I was heading back from January 6th driving, and I had to use the restroom, and I went into a gas station, and I don't know if the person saw me on the news or what happened, asked me why I was in town. I said, "Oh, I did that." I didn't think I did anything wrong at the time because was never violent, didn't break anything, exchanged pleasantries with the police officers, um, and then left. So I was like, yeah, I was there at the people's house, like making our voice heard. Like, these politicians are using us and imprisoning Americans. Like, we're tired of it. Everyone stood up. I thought it was fucking great. Um, that person had been watching the news, which I had not been watching, and the news propaganda was completely different. Completely different. And if you speak to anybody that was there that day, not on TV, like, don't go off of the televised interviews from paid people. If you speak to anyone personally that was there, half of a million people, they will all tell you it was a very happy, joyous atmosphere that had everyone of all walks of life and cultures united. So his view was different than my view. So I walked in and was like, yeah, I was here for this. And his eyes got big and he's like, you can't be here. And I was like, what are you talking about? I can't be here. And he said, no, 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 no. And I was like, I just need to use your restroom. Like, I'll buy something. That's okay. And then someone at that point was also walking in and he's like, he's like, okay, quick, go in the bathroom. And the bathroom wasn't like it was a small gas station. It wasn't like a normal bathroom that the public can use. It was one behind the register, behind a door, like in a back closet type area. So I go back there into this unkept bathroom and I use the restroom, or he tells me, don't come out until I tell you it's safe. And I'm walking to use the restroom and I'm just marinating on those words. Like, what do you mean until it's safe? And I'm just like kind of in disbelief, just straight disbelief. So I use the restroom and I'm just sitting there waiting and I hear the person outside picking out stuff and ringing out and checking out. And then the guy comes back and knocks on the door. He's like, okay, quick, come out. And I come out. He's like, you have to go now. Like, don't tell anybody you did that. like you leave, like go home. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I do. And at that time when I was sitting in the bathroom waiting, I was like, I feel like I'm like Anne Frank hiding in a closet, like being
Right.
told to be quiet. Like that is when I had that resignation. And then since then have thought of the similarities and reread that book, and it's just eerie. It's so eerie.
I've got a copy of it here, right? And it's why the American Gulag Chronicles book is called The American Gulag Chronicles, not because of Anne Frank, even though there is a complete parallel with what was, this is happening in Germany, Russia, and the fact that Alexander Solzhenitsyn was put in a gulag, and which is a Russian labor camp at that time. For anyone that doesn't know that within Second World War history, he was put in a gulag. And the reason why he was put in a gulag is because he made some sarcastic or funny remark about Stalin's moustache. And a friend then, or ex-friend of his, I would have thought, then wrote a note saying this is what Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who was in the Russian army as an officer, as a soldier, and then he found himself in the gulag, and then he wrote the epic book, a Gulag Archipelago. But I want to, if you don't mind, I want to read something here, because the parallels are real. The parallels are extremely real. But I want to read this.
Yeah.
Thank you. When Anna's, so this is Anne Frank, right? At, I think, 12, 14 years of age.
Yeah. About 13.
When Anne's sister was called up in July 1942, they were in Holland. The Frank family decided to go into hiding earlier than planned. For 2 years, they lived with another family in sealed-off rooms in Anne's father's office building. During their time in hiding, they heard of countless Jewish friends who were being loaded into cattle trucks and taken off to concentration camps. In their hiding place, the Frank family had a vague understanding of what happened to the Jews who were taken away. Anne writes, "We assume that most of them were murdered. The British radio speaks of their being gassed. However, the details of the atrocities did not become fully known until after the war at the trial of several Nazi leaders in 1946. I'd just like to say this. Gas, Cyclone B, created by the German pharmaceutical company under IG Farben, a pharmaceutical conglomerate created in 1925, which a company called Bayer is also associated with that. Bayer then, I think, were disbanded around about 1997, 98, after Jews going through a legal system to find restitution for the appalling gas that they actually created. This is real. This is historical. As we go down the epilogue page here, at the extermination camps, people were asked to undress, given soap and towels. They were going to take a shower, and then herded into gas chambers. Poison gas was poured into the chamber, and within 3 minutes, the people were dead. In Auschwitz, the extermination camp in Germany occupied Poland, up to 2,000 people were slaughtered at once. By the end of the war, 2 million Jews had been slaughtered in Auschwitz, and it's estimated that over 6 million Jews had perished throughout Europe. I have actually, on a personal level, stood inside the gas chamber in Auschwitz. It's one of the most harrowing experiences of my life, and something that I will never forget. In 1944, the Frank family were found by the Gestapo and sent to Auschwitz. The extermination camp in Germany occupied Poland. Van Dun, one of the people who had shared the secret annex with Anne's family, because off in their house was a secret annex where they hid other Jewish people to save their lives, and where they could be hidden. He was, who had shared the secret annex with Anne's family, was selected for the gas chamber. Anne's father, Otto Frank, was put into the camp hospital and survived the war. Anne's mother died in the camp, and 2 months before her death, Anne and her sister were sent to the concentration camp at Bergen-Belsen, where they both died after catching typhus. Anne died in March 1945, 2 months before Holland was freed, and 3 months before what would have been her 16th birthday.
How and my thoughts on that are, I don't think people still to this day understand how they got away with murdering and torturing that many people in broad daylight. So we're at over 1,000 people right now. And part of my dismay is, do we have to reach millions before people are going to get upset?
Yes, and I, as I, we talked about this before coming on the podcast and recording this and going live, was, I talked about what I wanted to do, because something really, really, your amazing broadcast with me the other day, where you had brought this up, and I think you're absolutely right with the parallels. Absolutely right. I don't think it's beyond hyperbole that we are looking at history, and of course the big saying is, if we don't learn from history, we're destined to repeat it. And the American Gulag Chronicles book is titled for a particular reason. American Gulag Chronicles.com is where people can go and find the book and buy it. There's now book 1 and book 2, but it is named, of course, after Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who in 1976, I believe, made a speech in Congress to warn America about the fact that they will lose their freedoms. And I think in
And that goes back to
1960,
the red coat, right? The gentleman on the
yeah,
horse with the red coat warning people. Like, this
yeah,
is not a singular event. This is history repeating itself and people heeding
absolutely,
a warning to
absolutely.
people. And I don't
And the
know, did
comment,
they listen? Either of those 2 times in history, did the people listen?
I hear you, because the goals of communism, the 45 points, were read into, put into the congressional record, I believe in between 1963 65. I've forgotten quite day. We're coming up to just got a last few minutes before we end this, and Felicia, just thank you again for joining me today. Before we go and end off with final comments, could you please explain to everyone where they could help you financially, the page that you've set up?
Yeah, so I've been reluctant to try and fundraise. I've always been a person that takes care of myself or makes do with what I have. Outside of eating canned meals for an extended period of time now, I have no choice but to fundraise. I need to be able to have a home to come back to. I need to be able to feed and support my children while I'm in prison and on solitary confinement in my house for months after that. I've been banned off of Cash App, PayPal, uh, Venmo, Stripe. There's more I can't think of, but I made a Give Send Go that is currently active. And it's givesendgo.com/Felicia123.
Right.
And anything does help. Like, this isn't for, I'm not trying to pay my attorney fees and stuff. Like, that's something that I'll be paying for the rest of my life. But I do need funds to get my children to safety and to provide for them while I'm away, and to catch up on past immediate bills so I have a house to return to.
Thank you. And I just want to urge anyone that very kindly listens to this amazing conversation that I have had the privilege to have with Felicia today, to get behind her and support her, and also to get behind all the other J6 prisoners, to raise awareness of this and what's going on, which words frankly aren't good enough. I've had the privilege to witness a heck of a lot on the ground personally, and be on the end of understanding what has been going on, and it's been a huge fight to get the truth out in the media. Felicia, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to end this conversation. I hope that we can do it again. We need to get you being interviewed by other people and to get your story out. So I just want to thank you. I'm going to play us out. Please don't leave. I'll say goodbye on the other side, but to say thank you very much for joining me today. It's been such a privilege. Thank you. Play us out. Wrong music. Look at that. The technical problems. I do apologize.